on the policing side, I started to get anxiety at work, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been in so much stuff, right? I've been in combat. I've dealt with, shootouts at work, but yet now driving down the street at work is causing anxiety, and I couldn't figure out why.
You can do this job and be healthy in it.
People can actually grow as a result of their struggle.
This podcast shares real stories of transformation and explores what it means to live well through life's challenges.
Okay, welcome to the Struggle Well podcast. I'm your host, Britt Myers, and today I'm sitting beside Ben Iobst, who is a Struggle Well graduate, also a Struggle Well guide. So super excited to have you on the podcast with us today. I know we're going to be diving into a lot, getting into a lot more of your background and experience, but just grateful for your time and you being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Of course. Okay, well, we can start with an easy one, hopefully, which is tell me about you, where you're from, what part of the country you're located in.
So I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and when I was around 17, left for the military. And then when I came home, came back to the Lehigh Valley area.
Okay, 17.
Yeah.
Young.
Yeah. My parents had to sign me off to join up, so.
I know. I was reading that a little bit about you beforehand, and I think we're pretty similarly aged, which we're not going to say out loud or tell anyone. But
I'm sure they'll figure it out if they listen.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah. I'm about to really give them a good point to hone in on, which is we were in high school, I think, when September 11th, 2001
That's correct.
took place. Yeah. And that was a pivotal moment for you in joining, correct?
Big time.
Yeah.
Before that, I had actually been thinking about going to college for computer science or meteorology, of all things.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, let's hear your best meteorologist voice.
Well, I never really developed it.
Sounds good.
Because I left too early. So yeah, I didn't get my anchorman voice down.
Oh, man.
But I do practice it now, in the psychology work that I do. I get to practice that anchorman voice from time to time, which is awesome.
It came back around.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I was in planning to go to college, and then I was in study hall, and the TV was rolled in. If you remember the old tube TVs, it was rolled into study hall. They turned it on, and the Twin Towers were smoking. And I remember kind of thinking, like, what's going on here? And I believe, some of the skyscrapers around the country have been struck by planes over the years. And I thought, all right, this must be some type of accident. And then, on national television, the second one hits. So real quick, obviously, we all kind of universally realized that America was under attack, and that changed everything for me. So I come from a family of most of the males in my family served during war. So that changed my direction. I said, well, we got to do something. I've got to join up and go find the people who did this and hold them accountable or whatever. And so ended up graduating, and I was in basic training for the Army Infantry, and 3 days after I graduated high school.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
and by the time everybody was going off to college, I was at my first combat tour in Iraq.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did your family, that long line of service you're talking about, were they all in the same branch? Was there like a little bit of diversity there? What made you choose? You did Army?
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah. Mainly Army in my family. We have, my dad is an Army vet, his father, Army vet, his father, my great-grandfather, Army.
You're like Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, and it actually goes all the way back. We actually have family members that were in the Revolutionary War. So really every conflict, there's been, somebody from the Iobst bunch that has fought in it. So, yeah, fast forward a couple combat tours later, I end up getting home. And what made me get out of the military is probably as interesting as what got me into the military.
Yeah.
So 2007-8 timeframe, we're in the Battle of Ramadi, which was a very, very dynamic experience, to say the least. And if you remember, during that time period, they were doing the elections, and both candidates were talking about ending the war in Iraq. And at this point, this was one of the worst battles next to Fallujah. Ramadi was up there, and we're in the middle of one of the worst battles. And both of the officials that were about to be elected are saying, we're just going to end this thing. And that really made me go, what are we doing? If we can just turn war off like it's a light switch, what are we doing here? So I made the determination then. Also, that tour was pretty tough. A lot of friends got injured. A couple friends got killed. I got wounded, and decided it was time to go home. And with the pressure of my family too. My dad, being a Vietnam vet, he kind of saw that this was every deployment was really becoming a dice roll. Weren't sure, was he going to get me home or was he going to get me home in a box? So decided to get out and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was going to take a year off and find myself. And again, my father, he said that he did that after he got home from Vietnam, and it turned into 7 to 8 years worth of really abusing himself. So he said, you're not doing that. He said, you're getting a job as soon as you get back. So I get back as an Army infantryman with a whole lot of specialized training, and what am I really qualified to do? So the logical direction was to become a police officer. Yeah.
And that's what led to that transition was, but still, so you didn't take any time off from when you came back? You couldn't have like backpacked through Europe or something, or?
I might have, I honestly, I was gritting through stuff so much at that point, that I didn't understand that you could slow down.
Yeah.
I had no concept, no understanding that you could slow down in any capacity. So I actually, as much as that increased the amount of trauma I was exposed to and lengthened the amount of time that I was being exposed to trauma, I honestly think it did probably save me a lot of really, really tough experiences. I think if I had nothing to do and had a completely lost purpose, I probably would have spiraled out. Even worse than I did.
Yeah, which would have been understandable given all you had gone through.
Yeah.
So how did that process work as you came out? You retired from the Army, you decide you're going to go into law enforcement. Was it a pretty smooth transition, or did you know where you wanted, like, were you in the town you grew up in? How'd you handle that?
No. So what I ended up doing was I came home, and my dad had kind of reconned the area for me. And there's a bunch of different police departments in the region that I'm from. And I decided to go for the biggest city in the region with the highest crime rate. Because I thought that was the speed that I wanted to function at. So ended up starting there. Not long after I got back from the military, I want to say, I think I got home in May and I started the police academy in June. So like no time off.
Yeah,
transition-wise training, I was fine there. It was very similar to military training, bottom to top, very, very similar. And, so I excelled in the training side of things. And then getting out onto the street, I did fairly well through my field training, because everything was, replicate. Don't think, replicate, do, and danger, whatever, just put it in the back of your mind. So in that capacity, I did fairly well. Where things really started to get me was when I wasn't working, and when I had to actually let this do any thinking other than just that reactionary thinking. And very slowly, it started with, some nightmares here and there, a little bit of, I picked up drinking in the military, like many of us do. And I come from generational alcoholism also. So that switch had been flipped.
Yeah.
And that started sneaking in more and more and more. And then it got to the point where what I thought I was good at, I now could no longer do, right? So on the policing side, I started to get anxiety at work and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been in so much stuff, right? I've been in combat. I've dealt with, shootouts at work, but yet now driving down the street at work is causing anxiety. And I couldn't figure out why. The answer was really, really simple. I was poisoning myself on a regular basis when I wasn't working and completely dysregulating my brain chemistry.
Yep.
And, probably some PTSD in there. I mean, no doubt. And so it was obvious, I think, probably to everybody except for me, because my behavior off duty was getting pretty difficult as well to deal with. But I continued. I love to say that this realization happened and people said, you're drinking too much. And I said, you are right. And just completely changed everything. That's not what.
Oh, I was like, what?
Yeah, no, that's not what happened at all. I needed consequences. The walls had to close in. Work had about enough of hearing the stories of Ben drunk off duty. And then in the process of it, I met a young lady and we had our first child. And within all of this, so work closed in. She had enough of it. And my mom and dad are stepping in now too. And believe it or not, at the same time, a lot of my friends that were on the force, back then, this was coming up on 13 years ago now. Back then, a lot of this stuff wasn't as talked about, but there was still kind of that quiet acknowledgement of we can't let each other get completely out of control. And thankfully, with all four walls closing in at the same time, I chose to listen. Right. I'm not going to say that it was my own will and I got myself healthy. I didn't get myself healthy. Other people helped me get healthy. And thankfully I listened. Between my family, between my friends, between programs like Boulder Crest, the predecessors to these types of programs, that's what got me working in the right direction. And really that's the biggest takeaway from all that is recovery for somebody from the warrior community and really anybody in general. I say this a lot. If I take one individual person and I put them out in a desert, chances are very high they're not going to survive, right? But if I take 100 people and I put them out in the desert, they're going to build a village. And that's the beauty of it. So trying to struggle by myself, deadly.
Yeah.
But working together, right? We can support each other in that struggle. And, it's the title of one of the trainings, and we can struggle well, right? And we can find a better way to put our struggles to work in a way that we can learn from them and work forward in a positive way. And that's the biggest thing that I think has really helped me in my life is working towards that. So kind of the journey that happens then from there is there's that clinical side of getting sober. And I'm a big fan of, use what's available, right? If you need to go to rehab, right? It is what it is. But then there was what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where things got kind of interesting. So I started getting involved on the policing side. I was a tactical guy, right? I thought policing, military, the answer to everything was kicking in a door and catching a bad guy, right? One way, shape, or form. And through this new way of living, now I started recognizing, I think one of the most important things I recognized very early, the idea of bad guy changed, right? I very quickly recognized there's not really a such thing as a bad guy, right? Now, are there bad people out there? Are there serial killers and rapists? Yes, right? Those are our typical view of bad. But the vast majority of people that run into law enforcement are not bad. They're just people that are having a hard day, right? And they may just be further down in the trenches than the person next to them, right? So that changed very early. So then I started getting involved in crisis intervention policing, so CIT policing, and got into hostage negotiating. And really, that was really cool. I ended up going back to school in the process of it, getting a degree in criminal justice with a specialty in criminal behavior to kind of learn more about that. And that, I almost had like a whole second part of my career that took off. And with that came specialty teams and all that stuff. So my life through working in that capacity really started to take off. And I stayed really close to the recovery community, AA, things like that. But I always kind of felt like there was something missing from that warrior side, right?
Yeah.
That purpose. Like there was the recovery world, but there wasn't like a warrior recovery world. And then the amount of work we were putting out to take care of the public, right? I mean, we have entire programs, hundreds and hundreds of hours on how to negotiate with people to get them to see that there's other options, see that there's a healthier way to do things, to get them to come out of their house or to end a standoff, right? But then I started looking at the rates of suicide for veterans and first responders, the rates of substance use for veteran first responders, our life expectancy being 16 to 21 years shorter. And I'm going, we have all these programs for the public.
Yep.
What do we have for us? And that really made me start thinking about getting involved in that type of work. So I ended up joining up with a CISM team, Critical Incident Stress Management, and that really focuses on that boom, right? But from my own experiences, you've probably seen it, being out in this community too. That bad incident, while important, isn't the entire story.
Right.
And if we can decrease all those stressors everywhere else, we're going to be that much more resilient for that incident. So from CISM, we ended up putting together it started small at first, an officer wellness team. And it started in the city I worked for. And the idea there was to get resources available for when somebody's struggling, rehabs, therapists, things like that. And from there, other departments in the region started asking us, hey, can you help us build one too? But we were doing these things off duty and as volunteers.
And somebody's struggling in the department, not civilians.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It's us facing now. So facing first responders. And the other departments started kind of checking in, and the champions in each department are like, can you teach us to build these things? And at a certain point it clicked. I'm like, wait a minute. We're doing these off duty, right? And we are like not compensated for it. Why are we all building different teams? Like, let's just build a big team and regionalize it. And that's what we ended up doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we ended up doing. So we built this regionalized team. And in the process of it, what we ended up discovering was a couple different things. One, that there wasn't much available for fire and EMS either from this, in the terms of wellness. So we brought them on too. Again, volunteer team, not a nonprofit, not a for-profit, just basically a club of us taking care of each other and finding resources. So we just absorbed everybody. Then fast forward, this is all going pretty well. We have all these resources. People are using them. And we start getting flooded with guys to the point where we're starting to shut down resources. Basically, therapists that are volunteering are trying to help, and their schedules are now overloaded. And we start going, wow, that's great. People are willing to get help, but what can we do to get ahead of this? And we ended up putting together this 1-hour wellness program. That was okay. It's not bad. We actually still use it in some capacities, but we've absorbed a lot from Struggle Well and put it into it as well. And that's what we started with. And that's kind of where we hung out for a while. So I'm still on the job at this point. Our team ended up growing, a lot of awesome individuals from the first responder world, start joining up on the team. Then we start getting some attention from the veteran world too. And me being both, I'm like, we got to bring everybody in. So now we start working together with the vet community. And that was one of the areas that we really saw a lot of growth very, very quickly. And what we learned was a lot of vets are looking for purpose, and a lot of first responders are feeling completely forgotten, right? You combine those two things. You're giving someone purpose, and you're also reminding them, hey, the vets aren't forgetting you. And it becomes a symbiotic, awesome relationship.
Yeah. So
now we start doing very, very well with everything. And then COVID comes along. Now, COVID shuts off, half the world? And with that, a lot of our resources went with it. And as a lot of people are aware of, you're aware of, COVID also came with something at the tail end of it, riots and the defund the police movement. So now we have more stress on the law enforcement world with less resources. And in the process of this, I remember calling up my buddy Matt. There's a bunch of our doctors turned off. Several stayed available. I will say that there were some awesome services that stayed available. But I ended up calling up my buddy, and I said, we've got to figure something out here. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really sure what we're going to do. I said, I'm just going to go become a doctor. And that's kind of how I did it, out of like, we just got to figure this thing out. So I end up going back to school. Originally I was looking at clinical psychology, and then I actually switched over to organizational psychology. And the reason I did that is because there's not a lot of stuff being worked on within the overall system, first responder and veteran psychological care, right? There's really good clinicians out there, but there's nobody organizing the entirety of it. So I switched over to organizational psych. I ended up completing that. And in the process of that, I end up kind of really taking a deep dive into what are the resiliency programs, the wellness programs, the front end education that's out there for that first responder that's coming into the line of work or before they have that major incident. And in searching the country, there's a lot of different programs available, but one of the programs that popped up was Struggle Well. And it ended up that an individual friend of mine put me in touch with Josh Goldberg, and I pretty much knew right away. I started talking with him, and I could tell his personality was, this is a guy who's a forward thinker. He wants to help the culture. So I remember asking him, I said, hey, could you send me some information on this, some data on this so that I can take a good look at it? And he goes, well, why don't I just fly you down and put you through the program?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did he make you listen to Tupac too?
No, he didn't.
Oh, okay.
He did
that's
not.
His thing. So
really? Tupac?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to ask him about it.
Okay.
Viktor Frankl and Tupac are like,
Viktor Frankl and Tupac.
Yeah. It's a good mix.
That's a good mix. Yes.
Yeah.
I can see the attraction there, but yes, makes sense. I love it. So I ended up going through Struggle Well, and I went down with two of my friends, my friend Tom and my friend Matt. And
the same Matt you had called?
Yep, same guy. And we went through it, and wow. What I can say about Struggle Well is this: nothing taught is brand new, but it is the perfect mixture for a brain like mine, where it took 22 years worth of military and first responder wellness that I had to learn on the fly, and it put it into a 5-day program. And I remember I'm there, I looked at Matt and Tom, I said, we're bringing this north. I said, I don't care what we got to do. We're going to start a northern version of this. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up coming back and starting up a Struggle Well branch in Pennsylvania. Matt and I are guides for it. And then in the process of this, we went through, and my friend Justin and I were kind of like, well, how do we practice this stuff? Like, what can we do to practice this stuff? And I've covered this a couple times. We're from the recovery community, so we're used to AA meetings. And we said, can we take this model, post-traumatic growth, and put it into an organized format for like a 1-hour meeting? And we started playing around with it. And that's what we ended up doing. And we took, it's basically, it's not a program. It's basically a practice, right? It's like if you teach people yoga and you want to get them together and they have a yoga group, that's what this is. It's a post-traumatic growth group to practice. But we structured it so that it stays on the rails.
Yep.
And what has happened with that is pretty cool. So we start this group, and we kind of did it just to have a core group of us that had gone through these different programs, a place to get together, but it started spreading.
Of course.
And now guys are bringing friends from the veteran and first responder community. And now that's actually funneling people into the trainings. So people who would say, there's no way I'm going to a 2-day or 5-day training. They are willing to come to a 1-hour long thing. And then that opens their eyes to becoming willing to go to the, the longer training.
Yeah.
And then what we've seen from this is this community has started wherever they're hanging out. Now you have healthy warriors spending time with healthy warriors. It's like, Struggle Well and Warrior Path talk a lot about the 3 to 5, but sometimes we don't know where to find them. We've got the answer. Just show up to a meeting. You're going to find more than 3 to 5. And what's happened is the meeting kind of just started growing. And we ended up having to split part off. And actually now we have regional areas. People are hearing about them. They're starting them all over the place. Some of the graduates are starting them. And then when guys are moving away, they're starting. So they're seating all over the place. And it's just really cool watching, because it's kind of like the whole warrior culture is just kind of starting to wake up and take care of itself, which is which is really, really
long
neat.
overdue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it is how accessible you've made it. And like you're saying, it can be hard. There is still sometimes, unfortunately, departments that maybe don't support a 5-day, like somebody leaving for a 5-day program. And we heard an instance of that earlier where someone took PTO and just said, like, I'm not going to disclose where I'm going, but I'm going to go use this 5 days, like, for myself.
Absolutely.
But that you're making it possible so that people don't have that barrier to entry to be exposed to it. And then they can decide for themselves if they, are able to go do like the longer. But I want to go back because I think what's really interesting, like you were saying about the organizational side of things and looking at how to fill some of these gaps or connect the dots, is I think, I come from a first responder military family, so I have maybe a little bit different perspective than a civilian who isn't thinking like that. But even for me, it seems obvious that there should be support systems in place for first responders.
Yes.
And so it feels counterintuitive when you talk to so many people still today. We're not talking about like the 1960s or it's like post-Vietnam. This is right now.
Yep.
And we still have these departments or maybe groups that, and I don't want to poke holes, but that like aren't understanding that there are going to be, whether you have a major trauma incident or not, even if you have that day-to-day anxiety of being on duty and on, that there needs to be support in place or that you should be able to raise your hand and say, I'm feeling maxed out. I'm feeling like this is getting really difficult for me. And why do you think from like the organization side, there's still kind of this resistance or maybe friction in certain spots?
So it's a layered thing. First is we as first responders, as military members, we have, and it's what makes us good at our jobs, we have a broken red flag machine, right? We don't see the red flags. And in fact, a lot of times the red flags excite us and we want to go deal with whatever's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
The problem we run into with that is accepting the help ourselves. Most of us want to help other people, right? I want to help all the first responders. I want to help all the vets, right? But then when they call me and say, hey, Ben, it seems like you're working too much. I'm like, nope, I'm fine, right? So I have to make sure I maintain that willingness. And that's kind of but challenge number one is we will not take care of ourselves, right? But if we start paying attention to each other, right? I may not take great care of myself, but if I'm surrounded by other people who want to take care of each other, someone's watching out for me too. I'm watching out for them. They're watching out for me. So that's kind of issue number one. Issue number two, on the organizational side, the world of first responders has historically internally trained, right? We never really looked outside. And what ends up happening from that is some really great leadership traits get passed down generationally, but also some really bad leadership traits get passed down generationally. And, the concept of groupthink comes into play where we think it's okay because it's always been done that way and everybody else is doing it. And ultimately, it needs to be trained out of us. We need to make the conscious decision within the first responder world. And the military's done it already in some capacities. They're beginning to embrace resiliency trainings. They're beginning to embrace health and wellness stuff. I mean, I look at the boots that these guys are issued now, and they're actually good for their feet as compared to when I was in, they weren't. So they're learning stuff from sports medicine. They're learning stuff from psychology, from organizational psychology. They're putting this stuff to work. We need to do that same thing on the first responder side.
Yeah.
And use modern approaches. And then that third piece, on the society side. So why does society sometimes want to ignore the plight of the first responder? It's sadly a societal issue of, if I acknowledge that you're hurting because of you taking care of what's happening outside my house, I'm acknowledging that outside my house is dangerous, right? So there's an element of burying our heads in the sand as a society. We want crime-free areas. We want safe communities, right? But we don't want to know how those communities are kept safe, right? We want to ignore that. And it brings attention to it. And that's why I think when you see that first responder who's talking to the community and saying, hey, what I've been through hurts. And they're saying, I don't want to know what you've been through, right? Because then they have to hear about how bad it is in their backyard.
Yeah.
Whereas that's a little harder to handle than, it happened during the Vietnam War too. The society didn't want to hear about how bad it was during war, right? Yep. It shocked them. It was a first televised war. It shocked them. They didn't want to hear about it, and people turned against it. We've since overcome that as a society, and I think we support our vets pretty well. I think can go along. There's a lot more we could do, but there's a lot of surface level support. The first responder side doesn't get that yet. There isn't that level of support because there's still that fear. If we acknowledge that it's bad for them and that they're struggling and that this is happening, we have to also acknowledge as society then that we're doing it to them.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing, I think, for society to really recognize. But I think we are getting there. I mean, programs, I would say 20 years ago, there wouldn't have been a Boulder Crest. 20 years ago, there wouldn't be wellness programs. 20 years ago, there wouldn't be chiefs embracing this. So we're getting there. We're getting there. And some of it's coming out of the military world. This is becoming okay to talk about. I'm sitting here as an infantry guy, right? A door kicker. And I'm here to say that it hurt me. It hurt me in some capacities and I needed to take some time to get healthy. And that wasn't done before, right? We hid behind the bravado and that doesn't work. It doesn't work to hide behind the bravado.
And it certainly doesn't make you any less tough.
That's right.
To say that.
That's right.
Too. I know there was one powerful moment. Like I said, I didn't know a ton about your story ahead of time, and that was intentional because I wanted to get to know you and let you tell it. But there was one moment that I don't know which part of your career this was at, when you were with CISM or doing some other part of that work. But you had been talking to a man who was, I think, standing on like a rooftop and was like considering, right, like taking his own life, and you having what had to have been just like kind of a surreal experience with him. But I think it is very profound because that's kind of a microcosm of what we're talking about, of there's like this real struggle happening. You're also a human being there. You're using the skills that you have. And you still have to be able to like go home after experiences like that. And it's just interesting, like from the mental health side, you're helping someone through what's clearly a really difficult time as someone who might be going through a really difficult time.
That's right.
Right.
And that's very common in the first responder world. I always say if we look at the use of force incidents that happen out there, I would venture to guess the vast majority of those officers did not get into the line of work to go out and beat people up, right? They got into the line of work to help people, but the stressors over time compounded. And then when you're this close to the edge and something sets you off and you lose control, right? And it can be a very, very difficult thing. So keeping those guys further from the edge is absolutely key. But even within that specific incident, I had to ensure that I'm emotionally regulating, right? Because I'm up on a building. And this is also a guy, he was doing stimulants. And that made it very difficult to negotiate with him. And when somebody's intoxicated on really a lot of different things, but stimulants are a big one. They're in about a 90-second cycle, and then they're starting back over. So that's why that specific incident kind of turned into the Lethal Weapon, reenactment where I, faked the cigarette and then grabbed him and yanked him back from the edge. But I recognized that there wasn't really another way out of that, that I had to find a way to interrupt that. So with that, we have to take care of, and it's talked about heavily in Struggle Well, it's talked about in Warrior Path, we have to take care of the entire wellness triangle, right? And that includes having people involved that can help us with that wellness triangle. But mental health is just like physical health. I view it as, if I'm not staying in shape mentally, it's not going to sit in stasis and just wait. That means I'm getting out of shape mentally. And then when something comes along, something difficult, right? It's going to hurt and it's probably going to injure me. Whereas compared to if my mind's in fighting shape, it may hurt, right? But it may not cause an injury. It's kind of the equivalent of, if you're a police officer and you're not working out, right? You're not exercising, but you're sitting in that car and you got to get out and run real fast after somebody, but you haven't exercised in 10 years, your chance of injury is extremely high, right? Same thing with our mind. If we're keeping our mind in some element of fighting shape through good wellness practices, then we can take the hits, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hurt less, but it means we may not get injured in the process of it.
That's such a great way to explain that. It's a good analogy. Yeah. If you're not getting stronger, it's definitely not just staying stagnant.
Yeah, it doesn't just hang
go
out.
In the other. Shoot.
Right.
I wish it did sometimes, right?
I would agree with you.
With working out in particular.
Yes, I would agree. Especially, as the decades are are increasing.
We don't need to talk about pages anymore. I know. I feel it. I mean, was your family, once you were going through kind of your own journey and your own healing, I strongly believe that ripples make waves, and that, like you were saying, there's a lot of positive influence that comes from even one person in a department starting to do work and maybe destigmatizing things that otherwise wouldn't be spoken about. There's so much power in that.
Absolutely.
Did you feel like your friends and family and maybe your 3 to 5, like, what was their reaction? Did you guys ever talk about it after you had gone through, you were doing a ton of hard work through, like you said, the substance side, of course, but just getting through all of these, on paper difficult things, and then now you're training, you're teaching others. I mean, that just had to have been really cool for them to see.
I think sharing it with your family is absolutely essential, and sharing it with your friends. I mean, I'm a big believer in, if I'm going to go on a cool journey, I'm going to bring people along with me. So one of the things that's actually, we're just talking about it actually on the way down here. I came down with a buddy. My friend Justin that we talked
Shout
about
out
before.
Justin. Yep.
And we were talking about that, always having people along for this journey, because the journey's much better when you're sharing it.
Yeah.
But even within like things I try to do with my family, I'm busy. I'm a very busy person, but I recognize I have to share this with my family. So a good example of that would be if I'm going to be speaking at a conference or something like that, I'm bringing them with me, right? We're gonna share that. What's cool is a lot of conferences now are like at these hotel water parks, great for kids, works out perfect.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing. And again, it helps the people around you too. So me staying healthy and the people around me staying healthy, then we all get to have a healthy existence together, and we get to share that. Because again, nothing's my thing, right? It's ours. It's always ours. Like even the meetings, the wellness stuff, it's all ours.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, is sharing it with your family, your friends, and the overall community, because that's how we get healthier.
That's very cool. And I was just thinking, I need my husband, he travels for work. I need him to get in on the locations you're going to, because he'll send me videos and I'm like, that looks horrible. It's just a parking lot in like Midland. No offense.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He's like, I hope you're ready for nothing, opens the window. It's not a water park for sure.
Yeah. Well, you sometimes have to do your homework of where the places that you'd want them speaking at are. So Yep.
You're just a good researcher. That's what I'm hearing.
You have to. You have to check. It's important.
Well, hopefully the people listening to this know, if they're interested in learning more, particularly about Boulder Crest programs like Warrior Path or Struggle Well, where to find that. But if there's somebody who they're at that point where maybe they're not ready to commit to a 2 or 5 day, maybe they're kind of in this holding pattern, how can they get connected? How could they find?
So one of the best ways for right now, to get a hold of me and the work that we're doing is through either sending me an email or getting onto our website. We have the guides on there on how to create a post-traumatic growth group. We also have a video too, so they can watch it, walks people right through it. And again, it's just a practice. It's a practice just like meditation, right? Yeah. Just like gratitude, just like a lot of the concepts that we learn in Struggle Well and Warrior Path. And this just gives us a place to practice that practice.
And I mean, it goes without saying, but I am so impressed by you and the work that you've done. Yeah, and are continuing to do. And again, I just want to express my gratitude for you even thinking outside the box of having this shorter, maybe more easily accessible way for people to start thinking about their mental health and their well-being. And I think that same with that ripple making waves, that's going to impact a lot of people. And so I think, anybody can come up with a good idea, but it takes that extra something to really bring it to life. And you've done that through your actions. So it's very commendable.
And it was a team effort. It's and we borrowed the idea. We did borrow the idea from the recovery world.
You stole the idea. I'm just kidding.
Acquired. Tactically acquired the idea.
Tactically acquired. I'm going to start using that.
There you go.
Okay. Well, I only have one final question for you.
Okay.
Where can we find video of you playing the drums?
I don't believe there's any online, but we will have to make sure that we do that for the next video.
Yes.
I think that would be an outstanding thing to ensure that we
have
we
room
take care of. Yes.
Right back here.
And we'll have Josh, you can play the drums with me.
We'll have a drum duel. Tupac. It'll be
I
awesome.
like it.
The sound guys right now are not enjoying this idea, but we're going to make this
I think this is an
happen.
outstanding idea.
Yes.
I'm in favor of this.
Me too.
We should
We'll
do it.
do it. Yes. It's been
Outstanding.
spoken. And it will
Outstanding.
be done.
I like it. I like it.
Well, Ben, I appreciate you so much. I just thank you so much for your time again and for being part of this podcast with us. Thanks for all you're doing and for being here with me today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.